Welcome to The State of Us. Real people with honest opinions and the future of responsible media. Here's your host, Justin T. Weller.
The mayhem at the government headquarters in Hong Kong, which ended in barrages of police tear gas, capped a day in which 550,000 demonstrators marched peacefully through the streets in scorching summer heat, according to organizers' estimates. This is according to the Wall Street Journal's reporting on Tuesday, July 2nd. We're talking about this today because I'll first say this. I'm sorry we haven't gotten to it sooner. It's not that we haven't been following it. It's not that we've not been aware. We've been doing a lot of other stuff. And it's also not that this isn't important. Lance and I, we don't cover unimportant things. Right?
Correct.
Okay. Speaking of Lance, of course, this show couldn't be complete without
your friendly redneck liberal, Lance Jackson.
My agent was getting ready to complain.
I know. Sorry. I asked you a question before the intro. That's no good. So you care today about this because it has to do with how America's viewed on the world stage. And I'm going to be excited to hear from our producer's unique perspective today on this one because I've got some thoughts about, how America should lead on the world stage, and I'm sure Lance does too. But the situation here, and Lance, you hop in if I get something off, I trust that you will, is basically as follows. So Hong Kong, for those of you that don't know, about 22 years ago, it was still a British colony, technically, and good old United Kingdom ceded control to China amidst pressure and some other things. Basically, one of the last remnants of the great British Empire, just 22 years ago. So really not that long. I was alive. So the situation is, they get transferred. Did the people of Hong Kong want this? I don't know. It depends on who you ask. Is this really what they wanted? Yeah, it doesn't seem like it now. It seems like they maybe weren't super pleased with the United Kingdom giving them up to China because China wanted it. United Kingdom probably didn't want it. And the people of Hong Kong may not have wanted it either. But now, fast forward, China's saying, we got to integrate here, right? The way Hong Kong's kind of been handled up until now is sort of more as like a self-governing territory, a little bit like a U.S. Puerto Rico situation. Okay, so part of the budget, right? Part of the country officially under China's protection, but also has a good bit of self-governance that is different from the way things are done in China. China recently wanted the chief executive of the territory to put in place an extradition order. This got some people in Hong Kong very upset because they have a different legal system, a little bit more in line with how a lot of the quote unquote free world operates. And they didn't like the idea that they could be extradited to Hong Kong or out of Hong Kong into China where they would be held to a different standard, where it hasn't been uncommon in the past for people who speak out against the state to not always hang around super long. Whether that's, I'm not saying, get killed. I mean, sometimes maybe, but typically just you don't hear from them. They go away somewhere. So there, this got a lot of people upset, obviously. I mean, you figure if you get 500,000 people, Lance, to come out and demonstrate, that means you've got to have at least 4 times, if not significantly more people than that don't like this, right?
Correct.
I mean, there's a small percentage of people who will actually go demonstrate. And there's a lot larger percentage usually who sympathize and are on the same side as the protesters themselves.
That is true.
So they originally took to the streets to say, no, we don't want this. We're not okay with this. Don't let this happen. And originally China and their chief executive of Hong Kong that they've been mostly pleased with, Miss Lam, she basically said, it doesn't matter. We're going forward. It's happening. Protests got worse and they basically quote unquote indefinitely put this on hold. Okay. Protests didn't stop though. And that's part of what we're covering now is they're saying this is an example of why we don't want to be part of China. Or we don't care if we're part of China, but we don't want China messing. We don't want them messing here. You know, this is Hong Kong. We do our own thing. That's how it's always been for, a long time. Like, we were part of the British Empire. They did some things that we didn't like all the time, but like, we still were mostly our own nation, or like city state, I guess would be probably the best way to describe Hong Kong. They're not technically that, but they've kind of historically operated that way. And I think basically what they're saying is they don't want China to think that they can just make this go away, is kind of what it's sounding like. So recently they stormed the government building and they started breaking windows there. They actually pushed past police barricades.
But they did. At first, it was peaceful.
Yeah. And this isn't all of them.
It's been a long, peaceful protest against this, calling for the ouster of the person who was going to put this in place. Ms. Is it Lam, L-A-M?
Yeah.
And she resigned and has acquiesced on some things, but then it was kind of like typical Chinese fashion. Okay, we're going to let it all just sit and we're going to do it anyway. You go ahead and have your say, and eventually we're going to do it. We'll do what we want. And so some of the peaceful leaders, or some of the people who were allowing the peaceful protests to take place, said, this needs more impetus. They need to know that we are serious. And so we're going to ratchet the intensity of the protesting. And they have now made it violent in that they've stormed the government centers, broke out windows, busted through doors, and have spray painted offices. So it's not like they went to this level. It didn't say, hey, we're going to have this extradition rights for people from Hong Kong into China. And then they became violent protesters. They followed some steps of nonviolent protest, and there's still probably a whole lot more nonviolent protesters than there are the violent ones. And so this is a case of some people going violent, and now the violence is getting everybody's attention. But it started out as a nonviolent protest.
Yes. And it's also important to note, because the word violent gets thrown around, and I think what comes to mind is like people getting killed or people getting severely injured. Most of it's not even that, the quote unquote violent part. It's smashing windows, using battering rams to damage doors, damaging police barricades. Like, again, are they doing things that are destructive? Yes, but just recently, and they're not trying to like kill the government leaders or something like that. So I think that's important to note when we say violent, what we mean by violent. Because again, gets covered a lot of times and it's not always clear. And in fairness too, they have been being, violently attacked by police the whole time, when it was peaceful and even when it's not. Tear gas and rubber bullets, which, by the way, Hong Kong still says they haven't used, even though there's numerous accounts from news organizations and reporters who have been on the ground saying they're shooting rubber bullets at people, that this is going on. So one of the demonstrators said, quote, "I want freedom." His name's Joe. He only gave his first name in fear of potential retaliation from the government. He's a recent graduate. Quote, "I don't know if this will help or hurt the cause, but I want to follow the others." The actions at government headquarters left some in doubt about their common cause. Quote, "The peaceful approach maybe it's not working, but it's better than using violence," end quote, said Elvis NG, I don't know how to say that exactly, a 25-year-old who participated in the march. Quote, "We should not give the government excuses," end quote. Others, though, said that the nonviolent approach had gotten the protesters to a dead end, and more decisive action, like storming of the legislature, was needed to show the government the protesters were serious. Still, there were few signs this week that the government intended to budge beyond recent concessions, and Ms. Lam didn't indicate during her Tuesday press conference that she would formally withdraw the extradition bill, which is part of what they still want. They said it's on hold indefinitely, and the protesters are just saying that's not good enough. It shouldn't exist.
Exactly.
And honestly, my perception, Lance, and reading about this has been they probably want more than that. I don't know that we're hearing a lot of that. I mean, you could see that one guy said, plain and simple, I want freedom. What does that mean is kind of hard to know because people have different definitions about that. So before Lance and I dive into what is the U.S. role here, Caleb. So we've got, right, this area of a nation, an area of China, a territory of China, and you've got 500,000 people demonstrating, over 500,000 people demonstrating, saying, we don't want oppressive government. We want our legal system to stay in place. We want fair trials, yada, yada, saying a lot of things that sound like some potential American ideals. What do you think, as an American, what do you think our role is when things like this are happening overseas? Or, I mean, should we be issuing statements should we be doing nothing? Should we be issuing statements of support? Should we be volunteering supplies? Should we be putting pressure on China? Should we be going so far as to say, if you're serious, like we're ready to send troops? Like what is our level of from nothing to the most extreme? Where do you see from a personal standpoint, what do you want to see involvement in things like this?
I wouldn't necessarily say send troops, but I do think that everything you're saying with the representation and voting, that sounds a lot like what we fought for in the American Revolution. They sound like American ideals. So we should at least voice support for it. Say, hey, we're rooting for you at least. Maybe not boots on ground support, but at least a couple statements that say, hey, we're with you. We support what you're doing. And, we're behind you. We're rooting for you.
Now, let me ask you this, though. Do you think that, because this is, but I don't want to switch this to Venezuela, but I'm switching it a little bit because I just want listeners to have a different perspective. We talked about Venezuela some, and, that the U.S. has been strongly denouncing, right? I'm not sure that that's making much difference in Venezuela. It's important we show our support. Are words really enough? Or does it, because there is an in-between. There's an in-between between simply voicing support and, boots on the ground type of thing. There's definitely an in-between. There's sanctions. There's talking to China, putting pressure on them. There's sending supplies, sending aid. Sending negotiators. There's all kinds of different things that can be done. It doesn't have to be military or nothing, or military or just voice support. Do you think that, are you comfortable saying, okay, we voice support, and their response is basically, well, that's nice, but we need help. Then what? What does help look like for you? What level are you comfortable helping them?
I'm not sure.
Okay, that's okay. It's not wrong to say you're not sure, especially on this show. It's okay to say that.
We should play the coach role. I'm the sports guy, so I'm going to bring up the sports analogy. The coach voices, hey, here's what you got to do. You got to break through the screens, set the pick, open three. The coach doesn't go out on the floor and do it.
Cliche master.
Right. It's up to the players to do it. Okay. We can say, hey, you want to succeed, this is what you got to do. But ultimately, it's Venezuela's responsibility. It's these protesters in Hong Kong's responsibility to get up and do it.
So you've got an iPhone, right?
Yes.
Do you like your iPhone?
I enjoy my iPhone, yes.
Okay. That iPhone's manufactured in China, which you might be aware of.
I'm aware. Most of the things are manufactured in China that I use. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. So there's other complications that come into play, right?
Right.
How uncomfortable is Caleb willing to be supportive of this? Because so far we've really not said very much. There's actually a quote in here from President Trump, which is basically not really saying anything. And I'm not particularly on Trump there. I'm just saying it doesn't say anything about where we stand on this because the president's in the midst of, we're in the midst of a trade war with China, and he's in the midst of trying to negotiate a trade deal with them, a new trade deal. And so
Not to mention a re-election campaign too.
Yeah.
On top of all.
So there's a lot of strategy, I'm sure, and a consideration going into you got to be careful about how you handle this. But before we continue with Caleb, we've got his perspective now, Lance, but let's get to yours. What do you think? What do you want to see us do, if anything?
Hello, listening audience. How you doing? We're just, obviously you just started to touch on it, and that is you're dealing with China. You're not dealing with Hong Kong. And when you look at all of the ways that we lean on China and the economic power that China has, and the president just standing up to China on tariffs and now giving in. I'll go back to my statement from 3 or 4 months ago when this all started with the tariffs. The Chinese will win, or you better be ready to go to battle. They will end up, when I say win, they will get what they want, or they will resort to violence. That's the history of the government. I mean, you guys are a little younger, but Tiananmen Square mean anything to you? You know, they allowed I
said that before the show.
All the civil unrest you want, and, you know, build your little ice peace symbol and everything else. And then, okay, we're getting too much bad press, so we send in the tanks and we just wipe you out. And again, what did the world do after that happened? Oh, it's horrible. It's horrible. And China's still doing whatever they want. So if you're not willing to do it, and no disrespect to our younger person over here, but you can give all of the voice support you want, and you use Venezuela, okay? The people that we said we don't want in power in Venezuela are still in power. As far as I know, the people in North Carolina who were using blackface withstood the storm and are still in power. If you want to make change, I don't think just protesting and giving verbal support or verbal attacking of the bad, quote, bad people makes a difference. I'm not saying we should go in and change it. I mean, is this what you want to fight with China over? Is this the, you know, you draw your line in the sand? I don't necessarily think so. I think the semiconductor situation and the stealing of our electronics and our ideas, those are issues that I have a whole lot more trouble with than I have. And we know that the tariff issue has hurt American businesses, even though the president hasn't said it. But I mean, what is it that you're going to stand up to China for? Because China's going to push and push and push until you say you're ready to fight. And then I think they'll back down, unless, of course, then they're ready to fight. But they are going to push. That is the way they do things. That is this communist government in China. This is their MO. This is what they do. So there you have it. I mean, that's so historical, and I can go even more into it.
We just keep I mean, it's up to Lance. We just maintain course right now.
I have a whole lot of other issues. I have a whole lot of other issues with China that rank higher than the people of Hong Kong not wanting to be extradited into the Chinese for crimes they may have committed against the Chinese government. Now, do I think that's right? Is it a human rights violation? Oh, sure. I'm saying that's all. I just think there are other things that I would have done before this one. Now, is this a camel's back situation? Are we upset with the Chinese over so many things? And now this is the one that's going to break the camel's back and get us to literally stand up to China and push back? I don't know. You know, I mean, there are other things I wish we had taken a stronger stance against the Chinese than we have. Is this the thing that's going to cause us to take that strong stance? Because we do know, you know, it's not as much as we make fun of Putin and Russia. That's not who we have to be afraid of. If you want to still be a nationalist and be a world power, it's China. You know, it's not North Korea. It's not Putin. You know, it's not the little rocket man.
Right.
It's not Putin with his shirt off riding on horseback. It's the Chinese. They're the ones that have the money, the power, the people to challenge the United States for world superiority.
So we'll get to Justin's view on this. But before we do that, Lance, it's important we tell people what we're working on doing, right? What is that? Why are we talking about it?
Why are we here? Because our mission here at True Chat is to educate people by providing honest, open, and respectful conversations. So I mean, that's the bottom line. I'm trying to be respectful, but just standing up and pointing your finger at China is not going to make any difference.
So we're going to get Lance's prediction on what he thinks my position is here in a moment. We'll let Caleb get his bit in too. But before we do that, we have to take a quick break. So keep it here on True Chat. We'll be right back after a word from one of our sponsors. Welcome back. Protest intensifying in Hong Kong, the Wall Street Journal reports Tuesday, July 2nd, 2019. We're going to continue with that in just a moment, but we're going to keep a real speedy debate of the day today. And favorite place to get pizza from, Lance?
Papa John's.
Okay.
Not politically correct, but that's
I said favorite place to get pizza.
They make the best pizza.
Favorite place to get pizza of chains. Okay. So no submitting answers today of boutique places that none of the rest of us have heard of. They have to be a place that is a chain. Okay. Like a big chain that people are aware of. Caleb.
Romeo's Pizza in Dublin or in Hilliard.
Well, I just said
he doesn't know what boutique means.
No, that is a chain.
No, it's
not.
That's
a chain?
It's not a national chain.
Like, okay. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure
national big. I've not heard of it, but maybe it is. Fine. Okay.
I'm pretty sure
What's your second option then? That's like someplace you can get that's not an hour away.
Pizza Hut.
Or 45 minutes. Okay,
yeah.
Pizza
You type in Romeo's Pizza over there while Justin's giving his answer.
I was kind of
tell us how many stores they have outside of Central Ohio.
I was actually kind of mad that Pizza Hut got rid of my pretzel crust. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah, they did have that for a while. I will say.
Okay, Justin.
So,
while we're looking up Romeo's.
Lance and I have talked about this before, and Papa John's is definitely, of chains, it's definitely the preference. Unfortunately, Urbana no longer has a Papa John's.
You didn't say that in the question.
No, I know.
Anytime I'm outside of Urbana and there's a Papa John's somewhere, I get Papa John's.
Yeah. Most times I would choose Papa John's. Like if they're just the same distance. Locally speaking, when I get pizza, it's Pizza Hut from a chain. There are some local options but those aren't part of this question. So let us know your thoughts at TrueChat.org, at TrueChat.org. Kind of looks like the Papa John's website, actually. What do we see? Okay, we're looking at a map.
Is that 3 of them in Columbus?
I can't see.
Is that where it is? I'm trying to read your map.
I'm trying to read it.
I think there's 3 in the Columbus area.
Okay, so our producer's trying to find out.
And he's I don't know. This is where I think NHS failed him. Because I'm not sure that 3 in the Columbus area makes it a national chain.
I thought it was a national chain. Okay, I'm probably wrong.
It's
now.
what
I
knew. It's what I know, so it's got to be right.
Yeah,
because that's the facts that I know.
Well, I knew it wasn't I didn't think it was a family plate, like a small little family chain. I thought it was like a national thing, but
there's nothing wrong with being a family chain.
Apparently, nobody family chain wasn't an answer for the question.
If you just Google how many stores does Romeo Pizza have, Romeo's Pizza, according to their website, says they have 30 locations across Ohio.
Okay.
But is that the same Romeo's he's eating at Hilliard? Because there could be tons of pizza places named Romeo's.
Well, let me look.
I worked at Romeo's.
See if it's the same website.
When I was in college, I worked at a Romeo's.
Yeah, but 30 locations across Ohio doesn't make it a national chain.
That's not a national chain.
That's an Ohio chain, which is fine. Just like Raising Cane's isn't a national chain yet either. But
it's not?
No, it's not. They have...
I love the 17-year-old mindset.
They're working. I don't know. I suppose it depends on what qualifies as a national chain. They have a few locations outside the state of Ohio now, but they keep growing. Yeah.
Wow.
This is the same Romeo's. So they have locations. 30 stores in Ohio. That's what their website says.
Where are they headquartered?
Cleveland.
That's what I thought. I thought it was a Cleveland place. I was going to say
Cleveland, Ohio. Yep.
There you go.
Wow.
Okay. There you go.
Right.
So, Lance.
Yes.
Prediction time. What do you think I want to do about this?
I don't know. You want everybody to sign a letter of intent to be a part of the United States and have one world order.
Is that what I want?
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
That would be a little complicated in this case, wouldn't it?
It would be. That's why I told you it would never work. But that's kind of the Justin thing. Everybody become part of the United States and join us, and then it'll all be good.
That was your stance with Puerto Rico, wasn't it?
Puerto Rico is part of the United States.
Well, okay.
But it doesn't have a Romeo's Pizza.
I'm not helping myself out here, am I?
No.
The
Puerto Rico
people
is a
of
US
Puerto Rico
territory.
are U.S. citizens. They can travel freely.
Then what
between
topic was
here.
I thinking of? Because he had the same stance a couple episodes ago. I could swear you did.
Whoa. I haven't said this is my stance for this one. I have said in the past that I think we need to seriously look at how to make the application for statehood more readily available.
Yes.
However, this is one of those
Our
situations.
producer is making our audience feel really smart. So even if you weren't at NHS, see you too.
I know.
See what you two can accomplish.
I bet I'm sure, Lance, that if we looked at a poll about how many Americans know that Puerto Rico is part of the U.S.
Oh, I thought you were going to say how many people were members of NHS.
Or how many people know that Raising Cane's is not a national chain.
Well, maybe, I don't know.
I've never even heard of Raising Cane. But anyway, this was supposed to be short, right?
I'm prolonging it. I'm sorry, guys.
Well,
Not you necessarily.
I didn't know that we would get into a non-national chain discussion and then get into ICE. So what do you think? You think that I want them to be a state? Is that what we're?
Well, no, that's my guess.
Okay.
Because that's your answer to everything international.
That's my answer to everything.
Is there be one world order?
Do you want our help? Great. Be a state.
Exactly.
It'll be simple.
Sign the contract, become part of us, and we'll help you out.
But seriously,
Join the
though,
empire.
Let's just play this hypothetical for just
Darth
a moment.
Vader, go ahead. Tell us.
Let's say this application for statehood thing exists, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And Hong Kong says, we're ready. We meet the population requirement. U.S. Congress approves it. China says, we're not okay with this. We send in and land, I don't know, 10,000 troops in Hong Kong. What happens? I mean, does China actually do anything?
I don't know. Do they? North Korea? I mean, the Korean
do
Peninsula.
they though? That's the kind of, it's like we all think, that's World War III. But I was watching this video.
Well, no, I'm
the
not
other
saying
day
it will be, but I mean, are you going to roll the dice and do that? I'm okay with that. If you want, you better send more than 10,000 because
if you want to call them
because in North
there.
Korea, they said the Chinese sent in 300,000 across the Yalu River when MacArthur made it up and took all of Korea. They said, oh, you've got a few UN troops here, 80% of which were American, but okay, we'll send in 300,000 people. And MacArthur's like, crap, if we're not going to nuke them, I'm getting out of here. And Truman said, well, you can't nuke them. And then Truman had to fire MacArthur.
He said, you can't do that.
Can't do that. And then MacArthur complained that the president said he couldn't nuke them. And the president said, hey, you can't badmouth me because I'm your boss. And MacArthur came home to a ticker tape parade and, old soldiers don't die. They just fade away. MacArthur kind of faded away and we settled the Korean peninsula into two Koreas and the northern part being communist.
Yep.
So, I mean, again, I'm not a big believer in the phrase that history repeats itself because I don't think it really does. There's different situations and different things that happen. But I mean, that's the reaction of communist China.
How ready are you to
70
back
years
up
ago?
what
Right.
you're going to do? Because I mean, if you're ready to nuke China, then I mean, there's no risk, right? But if you're not ready to do that, then you got to be ready.
I mean, there's a lot of people that are mouthy, and I say, "You ready to fight?" Well, I'm not going to fight.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's fine.
I mean, okay,
and
but
you don't have to fight, but that doesn't.
It's real easy to be mouthy. It's real easy to point fingers and say, "You shouldn't do that." Yeah. Well, what are you going to do to make me stop it?
On the last note of this, away from our hypothetical,
So what are you going to do?
I don't have an indication that that's really what Hong Kong wants.
So you want to send troops in and you're going to have them sign your letter and become
well, no, that's
part
what
of
I'm
your
saying.
one world order and then fight the Chinese?
I don't want anybody to do that doesn't want to do it, right? So I don't think that that's necessarily, I think what Hong Kong wants, I mean, what I get the impression of is what they've always wanted, which is to be left the F alone.
Yeah, they never had independence.
Right.
They went from being controlled by
That's,
England
I think, what they want.
to being controlled by China. So they didn't get what they wanted 22 years ago. They just got passed off to somebody else.
Yeah. And I think that mostly what they want is it's like, we don't care if we're technically part of what's, cause China has a few of these going on, these places that it controls that don't really want to be part of China.
Kind of like the United States.
Right.
Okay.
But, or
yeah, there we go. Thanks guys.
I think in a lot of the United States territory situations, like you take Puerto Rico, for example, they're okay being part of the United States. They just want to be part of they don't like this. They don't want to be this second class. It's like we either don't want to be part of the United States or we want to be part of the United States. We don't want to be this thing that we are where we're not, we are, but we're not. We sort of kind of do, but we're not. We are U.S. citizens,
Guam.
but right. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe the people of Guam feel differently, but
Midway Island.
Yeah. All of our little Samoa, right?
Right.
There's a place I want to go.
Samoa.
I would really like to go to American Samoa. That'd be neat. Hard to get there, though.
I just like the way the Samoan kings, before we took over, used to have their people pay taxes. The Samoan kings would get on the scale and the peasants had to come and pay money until they countered the weight of the Samoan king.
Yeah.
I'd be worth a lot of tax dollars.
I'd be worth a lot of tax dollars. So seriously, here's the last take on this bit of issue. The main reason we wanted to cover this is just because we want people to be aware, want you to be thinking about it. As it stands right now, I agree with Lance. I think there's other things that we have to take care of because truthfully, the people of Hong Kong, these protesters, they haven't asked for our help. They're not asking for anybody's help. I mean, at least not that I'm aware of. Somebody please point it out because if it's out there, that might change my perspective on it. If they were saying specifically, we want the United States to help us become independent, then that's a different conversation. But I'm not getting the feeling that that's not really their MO. Don't
you think China's going to respond eventually?
Oh, sure.
They're not going to let them just keep destroying government offices and everything else.
I think they're hoping it will. They'll, tire themselves out.
If the people of Hong Kong who are protesting haven't asked for help, they better get ready.
Yeah.
Or they better back off.
Remember what happened?
Or they better back off because China will respond. China does not like negative press. Okay. They just don't. And that's one way you can get your way. They don't. So maybe they're thinking, well, China is going to back down on this one. Okay. But one of two things, China either back down because they don't like negative press or they'll take care of the protesters because they don't want negative press.
I mean, they tried the back down thing because that's kind of what they did.
Right. We'll make this politician step down.
Really working.
And we're not. Okay. And now you've escalated it.
Right.
You really want to take on the Chinese government? I mean, you can die for your cause.
Yep.
I'm not trying to be sarcastic.
No.
To me, I'm not.
How ready are they?
I'm not a Chinese expert. You understand? I'm not a Chinese government expert by any means. And there are a lot of people out there that do, they study this their whole life but I'm just saying that's the feeling I kind of get about the Chinese government. They'll let this go on until they get fed up with it.
Yeah.
And then they're going to take care of it.
And so I guess I would say if, people who know these individuals and they hear our show, I guess I would be telling them, if you're really serious about this, like if what you really want is independence from China and you're not really saying it, you need to be saying it now and you need to be asking for help now. Because once China, I think that's part of what once they decide that enough's enough, it won't take long and this will be put to bed.
And the U.S. didn't step in and stop the Chinese government in Tiananmen Square.
No. But,
Hong Kong maybe with the new president. New president, different ending?
That's, does history repeat itself?
This president doesn't.
I don't know. That's why I'm saying
like he wants to fight.
They have to be asking now before China is ready to take it violent, because
would you agree that this president doesn't seem like he wants to fight?
Yeah, I think I would be very surprised if they asked for help because Venezuela has basically gone so far as to request assistance for which we have responded with mostly humanitarian aid, which again is great. I'm not poo-pooing humanitarian aid because I think it's wonderful that we provide the humanitarian aid that we do and that we spend so much in comparison to other nations on it. But I think we know darn well that what the people of Venezuela want is a lot more than that from the international community. They want help.
Well, they want regime change.
Yeah, that's what they want.
And they can't do it on their own.
They want to take back their nation. Mm-hmm. And they've tried. Well,
the people that are rebelling want to.
Yeah.
There are other people that are supporting the government.
Yes.
Understand it. There's always two sides. Okay. Yeah. Just because you can find somebody who's asking for your help. How many people still want the government that's in power?
Yep.
There's always that situation. And we tend in the media to hyperbolize the people that are asking for help and not find out how strong is support for the sitting regime.
Yep. So what do you guys think? Let us know your thoughts at TrueChat.org, TrueChat.org at TrueChat.org. Facebook, Twitter, and more. Lance, we've challenged people to bring us additional listeners. If they're talking to friends and they want to make recommendations on how to tune in, what are the ways that people can listen?
Well, Apple Podcast, anywhere else that you can find podcast, on Stitcher, or my personal favorite, Spotify.
For the State of Us on True Chat in Urbana, I'm Justin T. Weller.
I'm Lance Jackson.
And I'm Caleb Spinner.
Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Be the change.